I came to Christmas dinner, but Dad looked me right in the eye and said, "You're a leech. You're not welcome. Get out." His voice was sharp, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. For a moment, I just froze with my plate still in my hand. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon rolls that usually made this holiday warm and comforting now felt sickening. My father, Richard Parker, wasn't joking. He was serious, and I could see the satisfaction on my sister Rachel's face and the smug look on my brother Mark's. "My name is Emily Parker. I'm in my mid-20s, still trying to get on my feet. I put myself through school, worked 2 jobs, and lived in a tiny apartment where I could barely keep the lights on. My siblings had it easier. Mark's a lawyer, Rachel's a nurse, and Dad never misses a chance to brag about them. Me. In his eyes, I'm the failure. But what none of them knew, what none of them even bothered to ask, was that I was the one quietly taking care of Mom. Mom, Linda, has been sick for a while. Her treatments aren't cheap, and after she lost her insurance, the bills piled up fast. I picked up extra shifts, skipped out on meals, and used nearly every spare dollar I had to cover her appointments and medication. I never told anyone, not even Mom at first, because I didn't want her to feel guilty. But when I stood there in that dining room, with Dad spitting words like leech and Rachel laughing under her breath, I wanted to scream it all out. Instead, I looked at Mom. She sat there quietly, her fork still in her hand, her eyes glistening with tears she didn't dare let fall. She gave me this look, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Dad kept going, comparing me to Mark and Rachel, saying they had real lives, real careers, real futures. Every word felt like a knife. I thought about telling him the truth, that I was the one driving Mom to her appointments, paying the bills, making sure she had what she needed. But I swallowed it. He wouldn't believe me, and even if he did, he'd twist it into something ugly. That's who he is. So I set my plate down, pushed in my chair, and walked out without saying a word. My hands were shaking, and I felt the cold December air bite at my face as I stepped outside, but I refused to let them see me cry. That was the night something inside me changed. I knew I couldn't stay quiet forever. I knew I couldn't let my father's words define me. They thought I was weak, but they had no idea how strong I was about to become. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. Richard leaned back in his chair, his face twisted with disdain. "You have no future, Emily," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at Mark. He's a lawyer with a solid career. Look at Rachel. She's a nurse, respected and stable. And then there's you, wasting your time, living hand to mouth. What do you even have to show for yourself?" My cheeks burned as the words sank in. I felt every pair of eyes at the table on me, like I was some kind of unwanted guest. Before I could respond, Rachel smirked and jumped in. "Dad's right. You don't even own a car, Emily. You take the bus like a teenager. And that tiny apartment of yours? I wouldn't even keep my dog in there." Her laugh cut through me, sharp and cruel, and Mark chuckled under his breath, not bothering to hide his amusement. I clenched my fists in my lap, forcing myself not to snap. My throat tightened, but I made myself speak. "You don't know what I've been doing, Rachel. You don't know the sacrifices I've made." I looked directly at my father. "I've been." "Enough." Richard slammed his hand against the table, rattling the silverware. His glare locked onto me. "Don't you dare try to spin some sob story. You're just making excuses for your failure. That's all you ever do, excuses." His voice carried a finality that left no room for argument, no space for me to defend myself. The room went silent. My words died on my lips. I searched for Mom, hoping she might say something, anything. She didn't. She just stared at her plate, her fork unmoving, her lips pressed tight together. Then, just for a moment, she glanced at me. Her eyes shimmered, filled with heartbreak she couldn't put into words, a pain she wasn't brave enough to voice in front of him. It was the kind of look that said she wished things were different, that she wished she could stand by me, but fear pinned her down. That look was all I got, silent, fragile, and fleeting. I swallowed the lump in my throat, pushed back my chair, and stood. The legs scraped against the floor, the sound echoing in the still room. My hands trembled, but I kept my head high. No one stopped me as I walked toward the door. No one called out. Not a single voice broke the heavy quiet, not even Mom's. I stepped out of the dining room, out of the house, and into the night. The cold air stung my face, but it was nothing compared to the sting of their laughter, their judgment, their silence. Humiliated and abandoned, I left, knowing I wasn't welcome in that house anymore. I remembered the months before Christmas, the endless grind that no one else seemed to notice. When Mom lost her insurance, the medical bills piled up faster than I could catch my breath. I couldn't stand watching her struggle alone, so I did what I had to do. I worked late shifts, weekends, anything that came my way. My body ached, but I kept showing up because every dollar meant another appointment, another prescription filled, another chance for her to keep going. I learned how to stretch a paycheck until it nearly snapped. Dinner for me became instant noodles or nothing at all. Groceries were bare minimum, cans stacked in the cupboard, discount bread in the freezer. Some nights I went to bed with an empty stomach just so Mom wouldn't have to. When she smiled faintly after a treatment, trying to hide her exhaustion, it reminded me why I kept pushing myself past the edge. Mark and Rachel knew about her condition. They visited, they asked how she was doing, but when it came to stepping in, they stayed comfortable in their own worlds. Vacations, shopping sprees, family outings, they had the means but never the willingness. Every time the subject of money came up, they found a reason to look away. I stopped expecting anything from them. Even Dad was aware. I thought maybe he'd back me up, but he brushed it aside with his usual dismissive tone. Mark and Rachel have families to take care of, he told me, as if that excused everything. Then came the part that cut deepest. You're single, Emily. You don't have anyone depending on you. If someone has to give, it should be you. In his eyes, my life was less valuable, my sacrifices less meaningful. He acted like I was expendable, as if my only purpose was to fill the gaps everyone else left behind. I never told Mom the full truth about how much I was giving up. She knew I helped, but she didn't realize how often I skipped meals or how my shoes had holes I couldn't afford to replace. I didn't want her to feel guilty. I wanted her to focus on getting better, not on what it cost me. So I smiled when she asked if I was eating well, nodded when she asked if I was okay, and lied through my teeth when she said I looked tired. Those sacrifices stayed in the shadows, hidden from the people who judged me the most. They saw failure where there had only been quiet devotion. And while they laughed at me for being small, broke, and going nowhere, I was the one holding Mom's world together piece by fragile piece. That night, when the house had quieted and most of the laughter had faded, I lingered by the hallway, my coat in my arms, trying to collect myself before heading out. Voices drifted from the den, low but sharp enough to carry. I froze when I realized who it was. My father sat with Mark and Rachel, their glasses clinking, the three of them talking as if I had already vanished from the picture. I've decided the house will go to you too, Richard said, his tone full of pride. You've earned it. Emily doesn't need anything from me. She's a drain, and she'll never amount to anything anyway. He chuckled, as if the cruelty were just another family joke. Rachel's laugh joined his, light and pleased. Makes sense. She wouldn't even know what to do with it. At least this way, it stays in good hands. Mark didn't laugh, but he didn't object either. He sipped his drink, nodded, and let the moment pass. That silence hurt just as much as the words. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to breathe, my chest tight like a fist had closed around my ribs. Hearing him dismiss me to my face earlier was one thing, but now, listening to him carve me out of the family entirely, it was worse than anything he had ever said. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, just to keep myself from making a sound. When I finally slipped out the door, the cold air hit me like a wall. I made it to my car before the tears came, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Every sacrifice, every night I spent worrying about Mom, every piece of myself I had given, they all meant nothing to him. To all of them. I cried until my throat burned, until I could barely see through the blur on the windshield. The words replayed in my head. A drain, never amount to anything. Each repetition stoked a fire I didn't know I had in me. I leaned back in the seat, chest heaving, and shut my eyes. In that moment, I made a vow. I would not let his judgment define me. I would not let his cruelty crush me. He thought I was expendable, disposable, easy to erase. He believed cutting me out would keep me small. But I knew better. Quietly, fiercely, I promised myself that this would not be the end of my story. One day, he would see the daughter he dismissed rise higher than he ever imagined. I wouldn't beg for a place at his table ever again. I would build my own. And when the time came, he would regret underestimating me. I buried myself in work. Every morning I showed up earlier than anyone else. And every night I was the last to leave. When a complicated project landed on my desk, the kind most people tried to avoid, I didn't hesitate. I poured everything into it, combing through details, double-checking numbers, fixing what others overlooked. Weeks of long hours finally paid off when my boss called me into his office, a rare smile on his face. The promotion came with more responsibility, but also a raise that made me feel, for the first time, like all those sacrifices were leading somewhere. With a steadier income, I began thinking about the future in a way I hadn't before. I started attending after-hours mixers, introducing myself to people I once would have been too intimidated to approach. At first, it felt awkward, but slowly I built connections. I learned from them, asked questions, and listened more than I spoke. It opened doors I hadn't known were there. That's when Jessica, an old friend from school, approached me with an idea. She had a plan for a small business, but lacked the funds to move forward. I believed in her, and for the first time, I had enough saved to take a risk. We kept it quiet, working late nights on spreadsheets, pitches, and prototypes, building something we could call our own. Every spare dollar went into that dream, and every small victory felt like another brick laid in the foundation of a new life. Even as I pushed forward, I never let go of my promise to Mom. I still drove her to appointments, still slipped cash into her purse when she tried to argue she didn't need it. She hated feeling like a burden, but I reminded her with a smile that she wasn't. Helping her wasn't something I did out of duty. It was love, plain and simple. I stopped picking up calls from Richard, from Rachel, from Mark. Their numbers lit up my phone, but I let it ring. I didn't need to hear more judgment, more reminders of how little they thought of me. The distance gave me space to breathe, to heal, to focus on what actually mattered. My world became smaller but stronger. Early mornings at the office, evenings brainstorming with Jessica, weekends caring for Mom. No family dinners, no forced conversations, no begging to be included. Just steady progress, quiet victories, and the slow, steady building of something that belonged to me alone. Each step forward gave me strength I hadn't known I possessed. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was carving out a future on my own terms. And with every move, I was putting more distance between myself and the people who had tried to keep me small. It happened one afternoon while I sat beside Mom in the small exam room, waiting for the physician to return with her results. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The paper on the exam table crinkled as she shifted uncomfortably, and for once, the silence between us felt heavier than the weight itself. She reached for my hand, her skin warm and frail against my fingers. "Emily," she whispered, her voice shaky but clear, "I know what you've been doing for me." I looked at her, startled. She smiled faintly, though her eyes brimmed with sadness. "You think I don't notice, but I do. The extra hours you work, the way you pretend you're not tired, how you downplay what you give up. You've carried so much more than anyone realized." My throat tightened. I opened my mouth to speak, but she gently squeezed my hand, silencing me. "I need to say this. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have spoken up. I should have told your father to stop when he belittled you, but I was afraid. Afraid of the arguments, afraid of the way he lashes out. I let my fear keep me quiet, and in doing so, I let you stand alone." Tears blurred my vision, and I shook my head, wanting to absolve her, but she pressed on. "You deserve more than silence. You deserve more than what he's given you." Her voice broke, but she steadied it. "I don't care what he says. I want you to have something of mine. Something that no one can take away, even if he tries. I want you to know that I see you, Emily. I've always seen you." The words landed with a force nothing else ever had. For years I had felt invisible, erased in my own home. But in that small, sterile room, I finally felt acknowledged. The apology wasn't just for the silence. It was for every dinner where I had sat alone in shame, every insult I had endured without defense. I leaned closer, resting my forehead gently against hers, careful not to let my tears fall on her blouse. "Mom," I whispered, my voice breaking, "you don't have to apologize. You're the reason I kept going." She smiled then, weak but genuine. "You're stronger than I ever was. And one day, that strength will be what carries you through, long after I'm gone." I held her hand tighter, unwilling to let go. In that moment, no insults, no dismissals, no betrayals mattered. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, not as the daughter who failed to measure up, but as the woman who had quietly kept everything from falling apart. I didn't expect the confrontation to happen so suddenly, but Richard cornered me in the living room one evening after Mom had gone to rest. His face was red, jaw tight, eyes sharp with suspicion. "So it's true," he snapped. "You've been slipping money to your mother. You think buying affection will change anything." The accusation hit like a slap. I stood frozen for a moment, then shook my head. "It's not about that. She needed help, and I—" "Don't you dare pretend you're some kind of savior," he cut me off, pointing a finger at me as though I were a criminal. "You've been sneaking around, trying to make me look bad. You're pathetic. And let me make this clear once more. You're not welcome at family gathering. You bring nothing but trouble." Before I could answer, Rachel appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, lips curled in a smirk. "Honestly, Dad's right. You're always trying to play the victim. Helping Mom in secret? That's manipulative. If you really cared, you wouldn't have hidden it." Mark stepped in behind her, his tone calmer but just as cutting. "You've made this about yourself, Emily. It feels like you're using Mom's illness to get sympathy. That's not love, that's selfish." Their words piled on, each sharper than the last. My chest burned, my fists trembled, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse under the weight of it. But then something inside me snapped. I took a step forward, my voice steady but filled with rage. "You have no idea what I've done for her. None of you ever showed up. None of you lifted a finger. You left her alone, and I was the one there, every single time. Don't you dare accuse me of doing this for attention. You didn't care enough to even try." The room fell silent. Rachel's smirk faltered. Mark looked away. Even Richard's mouth clamped shut, though his glare never softened. My heart pounded, but no tears came this time. I wasn't broken. I was furious. I grabbed my bag from the chair, my movements sharp, final. You want me gone? Fine. But don't forget who actually cared when it mattered. I stormed toward the door, each step echoing with the strength of years of swallowed words finally released. For once, I wasn't walking away in shame. I wasn't hiding my face, wiping at tears, hoping someone might call after me. I left standing tall, letting the door slam behind me, the sound ringing like a declaration. This time, I wasn't the one left small. This time they were. The business with Jessica started small, but within months, it gathered momentum faster than either of us imagined. Orders multiplied, clients spread the word, and soon we were hiring staff to keep up. The long nights and careful planning began to show their work. For the first time in years, I wasn't worrying about whether I could cover the basics. I was finally standing on solid ground. With the new income, I took steps I once thought were impossible. I signed papers on a house that was mine alone, a place filled with light, with space for Mom to be comfortable. I furnished it carefully, making sure she had everything she needed. Her favorite chair by the window, soft blankets, quiet corners for rest. Bills no longer kept me awake at night. I opened accounts dedicated to her care, ensuring her treatments would always be covered. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a looming threat. It felt manageable, even secure. While my world grew brighter, theirs dimmed. Word reached me through distant relatives. Mark's marriage unraveled, years of work and family pressure ending in a bitter split. He was left juggling custody battles and steep legal fees. Rachel, on the other hand, had leaned too heavily on credit cards, her spending habits catching up to her until collectors circled. Then the calls began. At first, they came sporadically, short messages asking how I was, notes about how much they missed me. Soon, there were invitations, suggestions that we should catch up, attempts to weave themselves back into my life as if nothing had happened. Their voices softened, dripping with concern, pretending to care. I listened, but I didn't answer. Each word rang hollow, too rehearsed, too convenient. Where were they when Mom needed them? Where were they when I stood alone in that house, the weight of their ridicule crushing me? Now that their own foundations cracked, they came running, looking for shelter. I walked through my new home, hearing Mom's laughter echo softly from the kitchen as she hummed while making tea, and I knew I had made the right choices. I no longer needed their approval, their validation, or their presence. I had carved out a life without them, a life that finally belonged to me. Their attempts to slip back into my world only confirmed what I already knew. They never cared until they needed something, and I had no intention of opening the door they once slammed in my face. The hospital room was filled with the steady hum of machines, the faint beeping marking each fragile breath. Mom lay propped up against pillows, her skin pale, her hands trembling slightly as she held a folded envelope. Richard stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, his face already impatient. Mark and Rachel lingered near the window, whispering until Mom's voice cut through the air. "I need you all to listen," she said, her tone weak but steady. Her eyes moved from one face to the next before landing on me. "There are things I should have said long ago." Richard frowned. "Linda, this isn't the time." She raised her hand, silencing him. "No, it's exactly the time." Her fingers tightened around the envelope. "I've made decisions about what I'll leave behind. Every bit of savings I've managed, the jewelry passed down from my mother, and the heirlooms I hold dear, they will all go to Emily." The room went still. Rachel's mouth opened, then closed, as if the words couldn't compute. Mark shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting from Richard to me. "What?" Richard's voice rose, sharp and incredulous. "That's absurd. She doesn't deserve it. She's done nothing but drain this family." Mom's gaze hardened, sharper than I'd ever seen. "Enough, Richard. You call her a drain? Emily was there when none of you were. She sat with me in waiting rooms. She covered bills I couldn't manage. She sacrificed things you'll never understand. She isn't a leech. She's the only one who gave without asking for anything back." Her words hit the air like a thunderclap. Richard's face turned red, but for once he had no response. Rachel's eyes widened, her voice barely above a whisper. "All of it? To her?" Mom nodded. "Yes, because she earned it in ways you never cared to. Not with money, not with empty gestures, but with love, with time, with effort." Mark rubbed his temples, stunned into silence. The arrogance he usually carried was gone, replaced by something closer to shame. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding. Hearing her speak those truths aloud, truths I had lived with in silence for years, left me trembling. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but not from pain. This time they came from relief. Mom reached for my hand, her grip weak, but full of intent. "You mattered, Emily. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise." For the first time, the balance in the room shifted. Richard's authority cracked, Rachel and Mark's superiority dissolved, and the weight I had carried alone was finally acknowledged. My mother had spoken, and her words could never be taken back. The day we laid Mom to rest was quiet, the sky heavy with gray clouds that matched the weight in my chest. After the service, people drifted away, leaving only family behind. That's when the storm began. Rachel cornered me first, her voice low but sharp, demanding I be fair, and split what Mom had given me. Mark joined in, his tone more measured, but the message was the same: share, or they'd fight me for it. I looked at them both, the same faces that had mocked me, dismissed me, left me standing alone. No, I said simply. This is what she wanted. I'm not giving up a single thing. Their protests rose, voices layered with outrage and entitlement, but I turned and walked away. For once, their anger didn't shake me. Richard came later, calling as if nothing had happened. His tone was softer than I'd ever heard, almost pleading. He spoke of family, of moving forward, of starting fresh. I could hear the manipulation under every word, the same old game he had played for years. I let him finish, then told him calmly that he had no place in my life anymore. Whatever power he once had over me ended with Mom's final words in that hospital room. When he tried again, I cut the line. I was done. Meanwhile, the cracks in my siblings' perfect images widened. Rachel's debts grew heavier, her excuses thinner. Mark's divorce dragged on, draining him of energy and pride. They had once stood taller than me, casting shadows I thought I'd never escape. Now, stripped of the pedestal they'd built, they floundered, looking for someone to rescue them. But I wasn't that person, not anymore. In my own home, surrounded by the belongings Mom entrusted to me, I felt a peace I had never known. Her jewelry, her letters, the small treasures she had carried through life, they weren't just possessions. They were proof that she had seen me, valued me, chosen me. When I held them, I felt her presence, steady and loving, reminding me that I had been enough all along. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance. I had built my own stability, created my own path, and honored the woman who had truly mattered. The family I had been born into no longer held me captive. As I closed the door on their demands, their lies, their attempts to pull me back, I felt lighter, free, stronger than the girl who once walked away from a dinner table in tears. I carried only what mattered: my mother's love, her recognition, her trust. And with that, I walked forward, leaving the toxic weight of the past behind me forever. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from them, or should I have given my family another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.